Childhood trauma can create a sense of shame that forms the foundation for why we get stuck. The problem is that we can't often see that we're stuck and that shame is at play until someone tells us something really positive about ourselves and we can't really take it in. Or until we find ourselves in an emotional flashback. Although we know we're reacting to something old, we really can't resist the old message that there's something really wrong, broken, unlovable, or unworthy about us. We get stuck, and we can't figure out how to unstick ourselves.
Start with healing one trigger at a time. You can do this.
Hi, I'm Tamara Ridge. I'm a marriage and family therapist and a survivor of complex PTSD. I grew up in a home where I experienced neglect, emotional and physical abuse, and went on to experience 30 years of emotionally, physically, sexually abusive relationships before I was able to figure this out. Over that period of time, and since becoming a therapist in the same 30 years, I developed a system for freeing myself and for overcoming childhood trauma using curiosity as your superpower. Today, I want to start with a story. Like so many other survivors, I've had a difficult relationship with my body. I really made a lifelong, consistent effort to diminish myself, and that included literally trying to diminish my size. It involved disordered eating, exercise as punishment, and I ended up with really poor health because of it. So after really working to heal so much of my own childhood trauma, 2 years ago I shifted my focus and started really working on nourishing my body and resting to try to reverse the long-term impact of my own trauma-based habits on my health. The result is that I grew in strength in so many ways. My immune system got stronger. I was able to eliminate asthma medications, including steroid medication. I was able to enjoy and am able to enjoy more replenishing, deeper sleep. I have increased endurance and stamina. And I also have less anxiety, worry, and fear. The final result is that I have a much faster ability to eliminate triggers. But in the result of all of that, I also gained 20 pounds. So I used to lift heavy at the gym, but I can't now due to a diaphragm injury. You may have heard me talking about being run over by a flatbed truck when I was a kid. Well, I completed that injury about 7 years ago, and now it resulted in a paralyzed diaphragm. So my fiance specializes in exercise kinesiology and sports rehab, and he's offered his support in teaching me how to use my body weight exercises with gentle movements so that I could also regain strength that I'd lost since my diaphragm injury. But I just couldn't exercise in front of him. I was so triggered. I had this very strong, out of proportion, huge response that said, I don't want him to see me exercising. I didn't know what it was about, but I knew it was stopping me from regaining my strength and flexibility the way I wanted to. So I want to leave that story for just a second because I want to talk about what shame is. Shame can be understood as an overwhelming sense that you're not okay, that you're not enough, not worthy, that you're fundamentally flawed. People often will confuse that with a sense of guilt. It's different from guilt though, because guilt is the feeling that results when you believe that you've done something wrong. Shame is different. It's the feeling that somehow you are wrong. So let's talk for a second about where shame comes from. It comes from unspoken messages that are connected to the things that happened to us when we were children. So if there was a lack of nurturing, it's a very interesting story because when I was starting to work on improving my health, I asked my mom if she breastfed me, and her response was, "Oh, I tried that for 2 weeks, but then I just wasn't having it." And she said it kind of like that, which gave me an understanding of the ongoing attitude that's been happening since I was an infant that continues today. Her needs are more important than mine. And when you are a developing child, when your psyche and understanding and social interactions are just developing, and you get consistent messages that your needs are not important, it's easy to come to believe that there's something wrong with you, that you shouldn't exist. There's also ridicule. So when I was a child, I was made fun of when my sadness showed. My parents tended to tease me in really mean ways, and then suggest that there was something wrong with me when my feelings were hurt because of it. So that's the feeling that you get from your parents, that you're just really not allowed to have certain feelings. Another way that the shame can develop is really trying unsuccessfully to get what you need from parents who aren't attuned to what you need. So a neglectful parent or an abusive parent, or somebody who's in a position of power who takes advantage of you and doesn't recognize the damage or harm that could be coming to you because of their actions. When we try unsuccessfully to get our needs met, or we try unsuccessfully to make someone stop hurting us and we can't do it, the conclusion that many victims develop is, I'm bad. Some version of that way of thinking. I often see that trauma survivors will have these emotional flashbacks where they've left a home where they were traumatized, but now in relationship with their partner, something similar comes up, a similar need or similar dynamic or something that reminds them. And the emotional flashback will come back so strongly that the trauma survivor starts to believe that their partner sees them in the same way that they think their abusive or non-nurturing parents saw them. And when that happens, the sense of shame becomes so overwhelming that the survivor has difficulty snapping out of that. Not that snapping out of it should be something easy to do, but difficulty gaining perspective and recognizing, wait a minute, I'm feeling really, really bad about myself right now, and this isn't connected to my partner at all. This is something very old. Another thing that can happen with shame is that sometimes we will internalize messages so that we can reinforce negative, re-traumatizing behaviors that we engage in. And this happens often with eating disorders. I know for myself, from the time I was 12 years old until I was in my early adulthood, somewhere in my 20s, I used to stand in front of a mirror and say very negative, really self-shaming things on a daily basis so I could maintain that habit of diminishing my shape as much as possible. And of course, you know, that's a metaphor for diminishing ourselves as a human, because I didn't feel worthy of surviving, of taking up much space in the world. In every situation where shame shows its ugly face and stays hidden while it does it, it's those unspoken messages that come from a lack of nurturing, from ridicule, from being harmed and being told that everything is okay, from trying really unsuccessfully to get your needs met. All of those things lead to this very deep ingrained messaging that you're not okay or you're undeserving. What do we do about that? What we need to do about it is to push into it and feel where it comes from, and then take a step back and look at it and remember a couple of things. So let me take you back to the story. So I know for the last year I've been trying really hard to nurture myself enough to make my body strong and flexible and healthy through these movements that will allow me to be more resilient in my everyday life. No weight loss goals, no goals to change my shape, just to make myself stronger. And I always ran up against resistance. So I kept wanting to talk with my fiance about it. And I think, I don't know, we talked about it 50 or 100 times. We just kept talking about it over and over again. And then one day I said, I don't know why, but I just don't want you to see me exercising. And then it all came back. I realized that the extra 20 pounds that I had gained was weight that I was trying to prevent from happening in that 12-year-old mind when I started programming myself every single day in front of a mirror with messages that were so diminishing and so self-hateful that now if I exercised, they came back. And now instead of trying to prevent something from happening in the future, those angry words were pointed at me because this body is 20 pounds heavier than I ever wanted it to be when I was 12, when I future paced. It's ridiculous thinking. As soon as I understood it, that it was 12-year-old thinking, I was able to stop and think of these two things. The first one is, what would you say if your best friend or a child you loved said these things to themselves? How would you correct that? For myself, I said, I deserve to be strong and healthy and to feel beautiful, because I feel beautiful when my body is strong. The second thing is, know that the emotional energy in your body that makes those terrible things that you're saying to yourself feel like the truth, they're actually lies that have been repeated so often that you believe them. It's the weight of the emotional energy that makes them feel true. But just because they have a lot of emotional energy weighing on them doesn't make them more true. So I have a question for you. What's the biggest lie that feels like the truth that holds you back? Also, if you're finding value in my videos, please consider subscribing so that I can continue to support you on your healing journey. For me, all of the self-shaming messages that I said to myself 40 years ago that kept me from exercising until recently were focused on never allowing myself to gain weight. Because people who'd gained weight in my 12-year-old mind weren't worthy of love because they were mean, as my mom was. So the weight gain that happened to me in the past 2 years has really qualified me based on the thinking of a 12-year-old mind, because that's where it came from, to be unlovable. And unlovable people should just give up on trying. You see the way that thinking works? You see, when I say it, it doesn't make sense, and you think, oh my goodness, don't think that way, right? That's the kind of compassion you have to have toward yourself when you uncover your own thoughts that are shame-based, that don't belong, because you're beautiful and worthy and deserving of love. So find it. It might take some time. I had to talk about the thing that made me feel stuck 50 times. But recognize it as coming from the logic of a hurt child who was trying her best or his best to survive in a ridiculously difficult situation. Change the message. I deserve love. I deserve good things. I was trying my best. For me, I deserve to be healthy and strong. I'm lovable and worthy no matter what my weight or size. Same thing applies when it comes to messaging from a non-nurturing parent. So I just gave you the example of the way I programmed myself to maintain an eating disorder, which many survivors of childhood trauma struggle with. But there are also times when those feelings of shame come from a parent who just never gave us what we needed. When this is the case, I want you to do two things. The first is consider the source. Look, that parent probably has their own struggles that disqualify them when it comes to determining your own value. Usually parents have blind spots that make them sick and keep them sick and make them hurt their own children. Recognize that that was about your parent and not about how precious you are. I would encourage you to recognize your shame and get really curious when you're feeling stuck so that you can uncover the lies that shame is telling you. If you'd like to get more support to help you understand how to heal your shame and guilt so you can move forward in your healing process, I've got a free course, and I'll put the link to the free course down below so that you can start this work and start to uncover and eliminate your shame. You deserve much better. You're precious. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.